The arena is dark and full of theories.
District 12, Reaping Day, the 74th year. The square fills the way it always fills. Mandatory attendance. Peacekeepers at the perimeter in numbers that are a message in themselves. The children sorted by age into their rows, the youngest at the front, the oldest at the back. All of them wearing their cleanest clothes, because the cameras are rolling and the Capitol is watching, and there is a specific cruelty in being asked to dress nicely for the occasion of your potential death sentence. The narrator asks you to look at the crowd, not at the stage, not at the escort in her improbable wig, at the crowd, at the specific quality of stillness that a District 12 crowd achieves on Reaping Day, a stillness that is not peace but its opposite. The stillness of people who have learned that any expression of feeling in front of a peacekeeper is a gamble they cannot afford. In the back of the girls' section, separated by the rope that divides the ages, Katniss Everdeen, 16 years old, dark braid, the specific posture of someone who has trained herself not to react, because reacting is how you get noticed, and getting noticed in District 12 is rarely good. She is scanning the crowd with the automatic assessment of a hunter. Exits, threats, anything that requires response. She is looking for Prim. She finds her quickly, the small blonde girl in the white blouse, the shirt untucked, the two braids, 12 years old, first reaping. She has tucked the shirt back in twice this morning, and it has come out twice. It will come out again. This is the kind of detail Katniss has memorized about her sister, the small, specific inventory of the person you love most. Now, pan the crowd until you find another person who is watching Katniss. There, in the section for 16-year-old boys, medium height for his age, not the shortest but not the tallest, solidly built in a way that surprises people who forget he has been hauling flour sacks since he was old enough to be useful. Blue eyes. A face that is, at rest, genuinely open and pleasant. The face of someone who looks like they're about to say something kind. Peeta Mellark. He is watching Katniss Everdeen. He has been watching Katniss Everdeen in one context or another for most of his life. He watched her in school. He watched her in the Hob, the black market where the seam trades what it has. He watched her in the queue at the Justice Building on every reaping day since they were both old enough to queue. He has been watching her the way you watch something you have cataloged. The narrator asks you to hold that image, his face, his expression, what appears to be quiet attention, and then asks you to do something uncomfortable. Watch it again, knowing what you are about to know. Prim's name is called. The escort reaches into the girl's reaping ball, pulls a slip, reads it. Primrose Everdeen, the specific stillness of people processing the mathematics of relief. Not my child, not my sister, not my name. And then the secondary stillness of people who know Katniss Everdeen and know what she is about to do. She is already moving. She pushes through the crowd with a speed that suggests she has been ready to move since her sister's name was drawn, that some part of her has been holding herself ready for exactly this since the moment Prim turned 12. She says the words. She volunteers. The peacekeepers process this. The escort processes this. And Peeta watches her walk to the stage. The narrator describes what he observes, not the grief of watching someone he loves walk toward possible death, not the weight of knowing that the girl who burned bread for him is stepping into the worst possible version of the world. What he observes is a click, the specific sound, felt rather than heard, of a possibility opening. She is already half-loved by this crowd. He can see it in their faces, in the three-finger salute that ripples through the section she just left, the ancient District 12 gesture of farewell and respect. They watched her do something genuinely heroic and human, and they responded with genuine human love. The Capitol cameras caught it. By tonight, the entire viewing audience will know who she is. She has spontaneous, unmanufactured public sympathy. That is a resource. In a game where the variables you can control are sponsors, alliances, and emotional investment from the Capitol audience, that resource, in the right hands, combined with the right partner, his name is called Peeta Mellark. He doesn't flinch. The narrator notes this, not because it's heroic, but because it's diagnostic. He doesn't flinch because he has already decided something in the space of 45 seconds. He walks to the stage with the measured pace of someone who is conserving energy for what comes next. He shakes Katniss's hand on the stage. She is looking at him with the guarded assessment she gives everything, trying to determine whether he is a threat, an ally, or something undefined. She does not know him well enough to know which. They have barely spoken in 16 years. He gives her the thing his face always gives, warmth, sincerity, the expression of a boy who is doing the best he can in an impossible situation. She does not know that the expression is a practice he has been running since he was old enough to understand that his mother's cruelty was more survivable if he gave her the performance she wanted. She does not know that warmth, for Peeta Mellark, is a first language he speaks fluently enough that no one has ever noticed he learned it rather than inherited it. She lets go of his hand. The escort declares them District 12's tributes for the 74th Hunger Games. The goodbye rooms, the Justice Building. The goodbye rooms in the Justice Building are where family and friends of the tributes are given a few minutes of private farewell. It is a mercy of sorts, though like most capital mercies, it has a cruelty embedded in it. The goodbye is finite, supervised, and ends whether or not anything important has been said. Peeta's brothers come first. They are embarrassed in the way his family is always embarrassed about emotion, which is to say they perform not having it. His older brother shakes his hand and says something about doing the district proud. His other brother looks at the floor. His mother comes next. She says, "Don't disgrace us." Then she looks at him with the specific assessment she has always applied to him and adds, "The girl has better odds. Don't get in her way." This is not something a mother should say to a child going into the Hunger Games. It is, however, information about what his mother believes about which one of them she thinks is useful, and Peeta receives it the way he receives all information about people, as data, filed, available for later use. His father comes last. He is a large, kind man who makes bread and loves his children without the sophistication to understand that love is not enough. He presses a piece of cheese into Peeta's hand, good cheese, the kind they rarely have, and holds him briefly with the arms that have always felt like the safest thing in the world to him. Peeta allows himself to feel this. To be held, he files it. Then he goes to the train. The train. That night. The tribute train to the capital is everything District 12 is not. Smooth, fast, obscenely appointed, every surface a demonstration of what a nation looks like when one part of it extracts from the other 12 and uses the extraction to furnish its transport. Effie Trinket moves through the car managing the evening schedule with the focused energy of someone who has learned to love obligation. Katniss is at the window. She watches the district disappear behind glass. The fence, the seam, the particular quality of sky over a town that exists to produce coal for people who will never see it. Her expression is the expression she has been wearing since the stage, performing control over something very large. Peeta watches her. He watches her the way he watches everything, with the specific, patient attention of a person who collects information about people the way others collect objects. He is not doing this consciously in the way that suggests calculation. It looks, from the outside, like a boy who is processing a difficult day by focusing on the nearest person. It looks like being present. It is something else. He is reading her. He has been reading her for years. He knows the particular set of her jaw when she is suppressing feeling. He knows her instinct for control, her protectiveness, her capacity to love people without ever quite saying it. He knows her as a hunter knows territory, intimately, systematically, for specific purposes. He knows her weaknesses better than she knows them herself. He waits until after dinner, until Effie has retired and the formal portion of the evening has concluded, and then he does something he has been planning since the stage. He finds Haymitch, the private car, Haymitch Abernathy. Haymitch Abernathy is 41 years old and looks 60. He won the 50th Hunger Games, the second quarter quell, the year the tribute count was doubled, through intelligence and the specific exploitation of a loophole in the arena's force field that killed another tribute with their own weapon. He was brilliant at 16. He has spent the following 25 years performing the opposite of brilliant, because the capital took his family after his victory, as punishment for making them look foolish, and because the only way to survive as a victor in the long run is to be so comprehensively wrecked that no one thinks you have anything worth taking. He is drunk. He is always drunk on the train. He has a system. Peeta finds him in the private car and sits across from him without asking. Haymitch looks at him over the top of his glass with the expression of a man who has sized up 247 tributes in his career and does not expect to be surprised. Haymitch, you want something. Peeta, I have a strategy. Haymitch, every tribute has a strategy. Peeta, not like this one. He looks at the 16-year-old boy across from him and does the assessment he has been doing since the reaping, the one he does with everyone but almost never shares. What he sees, a kid who is calm. Not performing calm, actually calm. The reaping, the train, Effie, the capital's lights in the distance, none of it has destabilized him in the way that it destabilizes almost everyone. "Haymitch, tell me," Peeta tells him. "Just enough. The outline, capital attention, the romance angle, the specific mechanism by which two tributes from a district the capital mostly ignores can become the capital's most watched story." He does not tell Haymitch the full architecture. He does not explain that the romance is a frame he will maintain precisely as long as it is useful, and then discard when the endgame arrives. He tells Haymitch, there is a strategy that will generate more sponsor attention than District 12 has seen in decades. He needs Haymitch to play along with whatever he does in the interview. He needs him to trust him. Haymitch looks at him for a long time. The narrator pauses here. Notice what Peeta just did. He didn't lie to Haymitch, he told him the truth. There is a strategy, it will work, trust me. He just left out the part where the strategy ends with Katniss dead. He gave Haymitch just enough truth to make him a participant. He has been doing this his entire life. He did it with his mother. He did it with customers at the bakery. He has spent 16 years practicing on a captive audience. Haymitch is brilliant. Haymitch is also 25 years drunk. And Haymitch has been sending children to their deaths for 2.5 decades with nothing to show for it. He sees a kid who understands how to play the game. He has never seen that before, not in a District 12 tribute. He agrees. He pushes Katniss's training in the following days. He tells her to use the tools she has. He frames the romance angle as smart politics rather than Peeta's invention. Katniss absorbs this with genuine confusion. She does not understand why the mentor is suggesting she play up a dynamic she didn't agree to, and Peeta watches her confusion the way you watch a forecast and find it accurate. The train window. 2 a.m. This is the scene you are not supposed to see. Effie is asleep. Haymitch is asleep. Finally, after hours of sitting at the window, Peeta is awake. He stands at the window in the dark of the private car and looks at the capital's glow on the horizon, the specific quality of a city that has never missed a meal, an unbroken geometry of light and excess. He looks at it. He does not feel awe. He does not feel rage. He does not feel the complicated, compressed grief of a district child seeing the thing that eats his district from the outside for the first time. He feels nothing, which is not unusual for him. What he does instead of feeling things is process them. He processes the capital's light as an audience, a massive, invested, emotionally pliable audience that has been trained over 74 years to want things from the Hunger Games, to need certain stories to resolve certain ways. He knows what stories they want because he has been studying capital broadcasts since he was old enough to understand that the people watching those broadcasts were the same people who decided whether his district's tributes came home. He looks at his reflection in the window. He practices the expression of a boy who is moved by the capital's glow, the specific softening around the eyes, the slight parting of the lips, the quality of wonder that reads as genuine on camera because it is drawn from the same muscles that produce genuine wonder. They don't look different, which is the thing most people never understand about performance. The good kind doesn't look different. He holds the expression for 7 seconds. He releases it. He looks at himself without the expression. He is satisfied with the work. The narrator, quietly, he is not planning to win the Hunger Games. He is planning to perform winning them so convincingly that no one thinks to examine the performance until it's too late. He turns away from the window and goes to bed. The Capitol, the training center. The tributes arrive to the crowd that always greets them. Capitol citizens and their colors, their elaborate modifications, their genuine delight in the spectacle of 24 children who will shortly be asked to kill each other. Peeta absorbs the crowd with the focused patience of a person doing a job. He catalogs which faces are engaged, which are performing engagement, which are actually looking at the tributes, versus looking at the cameras. He notes the presence of an older woman in the second row of the crowd, whose expression is not delight, but something more calculating. A sponsor, probably, or someone who advises sponsors. He makes a note of where she is standing. He will make sure to be seen from her angle during the tributes parade. This is how he moves through every space, efficiently, invisibly, the casual glance that is never casual. Training begins. The other tributes sort themselves as they always sort. The careers in their confident cluster, Districts 1 and 2, already treating the training center as their space because they were told their whole lives it would be. The others, poorer, less trained, more afraid, orbit at a distance. Peeta does not rush to attach himself anywhere. He spends the first morning at stations he does not need. Knots, fire starting, the basic survival skills that he is competent at, but not exceptional. And he watches. He is learning the room. The room has 23 people in it who want to kill him, and understanding them is more useful than any additional knot-tying technique. He observes the careers with the specific attention of someone considering an application. Cato, District 2. Physically the most dominant, status-driven, the kind of arrogance that comes from being told since childhood that you are the best, and finding, repeatedly, that the world has not yet provided evidence to the contrary. Contemptuous of non-career districts, motivated by physical dominance, smart enough to be dangerous, not smart enough to be wary of someone smarter. Clove, District 2. Different. She watches before she acts. Her throws are deliberate, studied, the result of someone who has analyzed technique rather than just drilling it. She will be harder than Cato. Glimmer, District 1. Armor made of confidence. Look for the seam. Marvel, District 1. Follows whoever last impressed him. He processes them the way a chess player processes the board. He notes the utility of each piece and the positions from which they are most effectively deployed. Then he goes to his session with the game makers. The training score, Peeta's private session with the game makers, is 10 minutes. He could demonstrate his camouflage skill at its full extraordinary extent. The cake decorating precision applied to human concealment that is, in practice, better than most things the game makers have seen from a non-career tribute. He could score in the high range. He could announce himself as a genuine physical threat. He doesn't. He demonstrates it well. Not perfectly. He introduces a minor technical imperfection at the shoulder of the illusion, just enough to be visible to someone looking, just enough to place the work at the border of impressive and not quite perfect. He knows what score that produces. He knows because he spent 2 years studying victor training scores in relation to their arena performance, because information about previous games is the only information District 12 has about how to survive them, and he is thorough. He scores a 7, good enough to interest capital bettors, not good enough to make him look like a primary threat. He watches Katniss's session afterward through the partially open door he has positioned himself near by accident on purpose. She shoots a perfect arrow through the apple in the roasted pig's mouth when the game makers startle. He watches her put down the bow. He watches the specific quality of her exit from the room. Not triumphant, not scared. The specific pride of someone who has refused to be ignored. She scores an 11. He processes this, the highest score in the training pool. The score that makes you the most visible target in the arena. The score that puts you directly in the career's priority list for the bloodbath. He files this under useful. Cato. He approaches Cato the following afternoon. The timing is calibrated. After Cato has spent 2 hours watching career tributes drilled together in a configuration that emphasizes their cohesion and his own lateral position as the pack's weapon rather than its strategist, he catches Cato at a moment of mild, unacknowledged boredom. He does not ask to join them. He offers something. He knows her, he tells Cato, the girl from his district, the 11. He has known her his whole life. He knows her routes, her habits, her specific survival instincts, where she would go, how she reads terrain, where she would feel safe and would therefore be. He is offering Cato an intelligence advantage in exchange for alliance inclusion. Cato looks at him. Cato processes people the way blunt instruments process everything, through application of force and assessment of results. Peeta is offering something Cato can use. That is sufficient for Cato. He agrees. The narrator, he just traded Katniss's survival odds for his own. He did it in 60 seconds. He smiled through the entire thing. Caesar Flickerman's stage. The interview night, the tributes have been dressed and styled and prepared by their capital teams. Katniss comes out in a dress that catches fire, or appears to, and the capital audience loves it. They chant District 12 in the performance of enthusiasm they bring to everything. She sits across from Caesar, and is, by her own assessment and Haymitch's stiff, unconvincing, a person performing ease without having it. She gets off the stage. Peeta gets on. The narrator walks you through the architecture of what follows. He shakes Caesar's hand with the exact pressure that reads as both confident and not aggressive, a handshake he has practiced. He sits. He deploys the expression that says, "I am a boy who is doing his best in a situation I didn't choose, and I am doing it with as much good humor as I can manage." The expression is entirely constructed and reads as entirely genuine. Caesar leans forward. This already, in the first 30 seconds, is working. They talk. Peeta is funny, self-deprecating in the way of someone who is secure rather than anxious. He makes a joke about his training score. Caesar laughs genuinely. The audience laughs. The temperature in the room rises. Then Caesar asks the question he asks every tribute with romantic potential. Is there someone special back home? This is the moment Peeta has been building toward? He pauses. The pause is calibrated, long enough to appear like a reluctant decision, short enough to feel spontaneous. He looks at his hands. He looks at Caesar. He looks briefly at the crowd. He gives them the expression of a boy deciding to say something he wasn't going to say. He says, "There is a girl, not back home, here, in these games." His district partner, he has had a crush on her since they were 5 years old. He knew her only at a distance. She was someone you watched, not someone you got to know. And then Reaping Day happened, and she walked to that stage, and he watched the whole district say goodbye to her. He stops. Caesar waits. I just didn't want to die without her knowing. The silence that follows lasts approximately 4 seconds. In 4 seconds, 30 cameras catch 30 different versions of the Capitol audience's response. Women in elaborate headdresses press their hands to their chests. A man near the back makes a sound that is not quite a sob. Caesar Flickerman, who has narrated 73 games and has seen every variety of tribute performance the human species can produce, has his eyes wide in a way that suggests he has been surprised. Caesar, so is this going to be your strategy? A star-crossed romance. Peeta looks at him with an expression that is perfect. Not the word, the thing. Perfect. The combination of a small, sad smile and a slight shake of the head that conveys simultaneously, I have thought about this, I am not naive, and my feelings exist regardless of whether they are strategically useful. It's not a strategy, I just didn't want to die without her knowing. He has said it twice, he will not say it a third time. He knows that a third repetition becomes performance. 2 is the exact count. The narrator, that line, that single line, Caesar Flickerman, who has seen everything, almost loses his professional composure. The Capitol audience is already writing the story in their heads, and Peeta knows it, because Peeta wrote it first. He has, in 90 seconds, transformed himself from the baker's son from District 12 into the romantic lead of the Capitol's favorite story. He has made the audience need him to survive. He has made Katniss's death, if it happens first, into a tragedy that will be felt in the Capitol for years. And if she survives him, she becomes the girl who couldn't save the boy who loved her. Either way, he wins the audience. And he knows, because he has been watching Capitol broadcast patterns since he was 14, that sponsors follow audience investment the way money follows stories. The gold follows the love. He has just printed money. He shakes Caesar's hand. He returns to the backstage area. Katniss is there. She is furious. She says, "You made me look weak." She says, "I didn't ask you to." He does what he always does when someone has strong feelings that could become obstacles. He absorbs the feelings, he acknowledges them, and he gives her just enough plausible sincerity to replace certainty with doubt. He apologizes. He seems flustered. He tells her he thought it might help her with the sponsors. Sympathy. Attention. He frames it as a strategic decision made without her consent that he genuinely regrets, rather than what it is. The opening move of a plan she will not survive. She doesn't forgive him. She doesn't trust him. But she is uncertain. Uncertainty is all he needs. The launch platforms, 60 seconds before the gong. The tube rises and deposits Peeta Mellark into the light. The arena materializes around him. A broad, flat landscape with a golden horn at its center and dense forest beyond, green and dark and extending to the horizon in every direction. The cornucopia is loaded. Weapons, food, supplies, the full inventory of things that will keep you alive and kill other people, and the 23 other tributes are on their platforms in a circle around it. All of them absorbing the same information simultaneously. All of them calculating. He does not look at the other tributes first. He looks at the cornucopia, then the forest. Then he does a systematic sweep of the platforms, not the dramatic kind, not the kind that signals anxiety or threat assessment, the casual kind, the kind that looks like a boy who is just getting his bearings and is not registering what he is actually doing, which is completing an inventory he has been running in theory for 2 weeks, and is now running against live data. He locates Cato, 2 platforms to his right, already coiled. Clove at his 7 o'clock, Katniss at his 11, facing the forest, her jaw set in the specific way he has cataloged. She is going to run. She is a hunter. The forest is her space. She will not fight at the cornucopia. She understands that bloodbath math is not her advantage. She will get a pack, and she will go. He knows this. He files it under, she is safe for now, which means she is useful for now. He is afraid. The narrator is specific about this, not to generate sympathy, but because it is accurate. He is afraid the way a person who does not have a death wish is afraid when they are standing on a platform 60 seconds from a situation in which most of the participants will die. The fear is real. It is also small and managed, and in a corner of a very controlled mind where it will not interfere with anything. He has a plan for the bloodbath: retreat, let the careers do the work, meet them on the far side of the initial chaos, present himself as having survived rather than fled. He has a plan for the mid-game: maintain the career alliance, manage the Katniss search to ensure she is never found by anyone but him at the time of his choosing. He has a plan for the endgame. He does not think about the endgame yet. The endgame is 12 days away, and thinking about it now is a waste of cognitive bandwidth. The gong. He runs. The bloodbath. The cornucopia. He does not fight. This is by design. He is strong, but he is not career-trained. And the bloodbath is where career training is the most decisive, which means engagement in the bloodbath is exactly where his disadvantage is greatest. He is not reckless. He has never been reckless. He grabs a pack near the cornucopia's outer edge, food, a knife, basic supplies, and he moves away from the center, circling the perimeter until the worst of it is over. He watches while he moves. The game makers have put the cameras everywhere, and he knows this, and he knows that the capital audience is watching his feed specifically now. The boy who loves the girl. Where is he? Is he okay? And so he runs with the expression of a person who is frightened and surviving rather than retreating strategically, which is the expression he has decided on and which he maintains with complete consistency for the approximately 4 minutes that the bloodbath's most active phase lasts. When it is over, 11 tributes are dead. He finds Cato and the remaining careers, Clove, Marvel, Glimmer, at the cornucopia's mouth. They have the weapons, the food, the central position. They are, as expected, the dominant pack in the opening hours. He presents himself to Cato with the specific demeanor he has selected: loyal, grateful, useful. He has survived. He is here. He has information about the girl. Cato looks at him, nods. He is in. The tree. Katniss's escape. The careers track Katniss to a tree. She is in the canopy, high, out of reach, where her light body and her hunter's skill at climbing have taken her, while the careers' bodies, built for different terrain, cannot easily follow. Cato attempts the climb and fails. The pack settles in below to wait. Peeta is with them. He is, from the outside, enthusiastically participating in the hunt. He makes suggestions. He agrees with Cato's tactical assessments. He holds the torch when Cato needs his hands. He performs the role of the career pack's newest and most motivated member with the full commitment of someone who has been performing roles since before he understood that he was doing it. What he is actually doing, he is watching Katniss in the tree. He is monitoring her position, her body language, the angle of her attention. He is taking small, invisible steps that adjust Cato's positioning, suggesting they move the fire here rather than there, suggesting they wait rather than press, in ways that give her time. Not from compassion, from production logic. She cannot die in a tree on day 2. She cannot die anonymously, without narrative, without the specific dramatic weight that will maximize the capital return on the weeks he has invested in their story. If she dies here, alone in the dark, from a career's thrown knife or simple exposure, the love story dies with her, and the love story is the asset, and the love story is not yet fully liquid. He needs her to survive long enough for her death to mean something. The narrator says it plainly. He is not protecting her. He is managing her. The tracker-jacker nest is Katniss's initiative. The narrator is careful to establish this. She finds it above her in the tree. She cuts it loose. The next morning, the swarm falls on the sleeping career pack with the specific mechanical certainty of something that has been engineered by people who design ways to kill at scale. Glimmer is stung repeatedly. She dies badly. Another tribute, the girl from District 4, is stung to death. Cato, Marvel, and Clove retreat, stung and disoriented. Peeta is stung also. This is not a controlled event, and he takes the hits that proximity requires. But he is functional. He knows what tracker-jacker venom does. Hallucinations, disorientation, worse with larger doses. Katniss is also stung. She is hallucinating. She is running. He watches her go. He could stop her. Not easily. She is faster than him under normal circumstances, and the venom has not hit him as hard. But possibly. She is disoriented. She is moving without full coordination. He is between her and the forest edge. He does not stop her. The narrator holds on this moment. He could let the tracker-jacker venom finish her now, but a poisoning death, alone in the woods, is bad TV and worse for his narrative. She needs to die at a climactic moment. She needs to die at a moment the capital audience will remember. He lets her go. He says one word to her. Run. She runs. He lets her. The river. The wound. The mask comes off. Cato is the problem. Cato is smart enough to understand, in retrospect, that something went wrong at the tree. The positioning of the career pack, the specific choices made about where to sleep. There were suggestions made that he cannot now fully reconstruct, but which, in aggregate, produced a result that benefited neither him nor the pack. He is not sophisticated enough to identify Peeta as the source, but he is suspicious, and suspicious Cato is dangerous. He confronts Peeta near the river on the third day. It begins as a demand for better intelligence. You said you knew where she'd go. She's not where you said. And escalates with the specific acceleration of a person who is looking for an outlet for free-floating mistrust. He slashes Peeta's thigh with a knife. The wound is serious. Not immediately fatal, but infected and untreated it will be serious. Peeta runs. He half runs, half stumbles, the leg hot and wrong beneath him, and reaches the river and enters it because the water will cover his trail. He camouflages himself on the bank, flour sacks and cake frosting. The skill that has always been his, applied to the specific canvas of a riverbank, the colors of mud and root and the particular gray-brown of riverstone. He lies down. He makes himself disappear. And he is alone. The narrator invites you to observe him here, to watch what happens when he is genuinely alone, when the cameras may be on him, but the performance audience is absent, when there is no one to read him, when the mask serves no function. He does not pray. He does not think about his family. He does not cycle through memories of people he loves, because he does not love people in the way that produces memories you cycle through. He does not feel despair or grief or the specific human terror of a 16-year-old who might die alone on a river bank with an infected leg wound in a televised murder contest. He inventories. He goes through his situation with the systematic precision of someone doing an accounting. Wound. Serious, but the leg is functional if he limits movement. Supplies, 4 days of food remaining, water access from the river. Career pack, fractured and suspicious, temporarily not a resource. Katniss, somewhere in the forest, alive, not yet found. He adjusts his plan. He will wait here. The leg needs rest. The wound needs management. He cannot manage it without medicine, and medicine means sponsors, and sponsors mean the story needs to be running. And the story is running because Caesar's interview was 2 days ago, and the capital audience is investing in every hour he stays alive. He waits. The narrator, this is not shown to generate sympathy. It is shown to confirm the diagnosis. When the mask is off, when he is genuinely alone and believes no one is watching, he does not pray or grieve or reach for anything that resembles the texture of a human interior. He solves problems. He has always solved problems. He was built for this, not by the Capitol, not by the Hunger Games, but by the specific configuration of what he is, which has been visible to no one because what he is has been useful to hide. Rue. A brief scene. The narrator does not linger here. Rue is not Peeta's story, but does not skip it either. She is 12 years old, District 11. She survives by moving through the canopy, by being small and fast and genuinely intelligent in the way that the arena's design never accounts for. She and Katniss form an alliance in the middle days of the games. Two people who recognize in each other something worth trusting. The narrator describes this in the specific terms of what it produces. Genuine warmth, genuine friendship, the real version of the thing Peeta has been performing. Katniss covers Rue's body in flowers after Marvel's spear kills her. The capital audience watches with the specific quality of attention that people bring to things that move them past the comfortable surface of entertainment and into the uncomfortable territory of feeling something real. The cameras linger. Somewhere, the narrator does not establish exactly where, because the game's broadcast is everywhere and Victor's accommodations include viewing screens. Peeta is watching this on a monitor. He watches the audience's response. He watches Katniss's grief in the way it reads on camera. Unmanufactured, complete. The specific expression of a person who has lost someone they did not know they would love. He notes, she is capable of generating the kind of love that turns cameras soft. The kind that makes an audience feel that what they are watching is real rather than spectacle. He recalibrates. She is more valuable alive and more valuable dying at maximum narrative weight than his initial estimate. The investment has appreciated. He adjusts his timeline accordingly. The cave, the most important scene he will ever perform. Katniss finds him on the riverbank. The narrator is explicit about this. She finds him. She is not led to him. She stumbles on his camouflage by accident, or rather she finds him because she is a hunter, and she is looking and she is good. This is not part of his plan. The plan accounts for this possibility. He has considered several scenarios in which Katniss encounters him while he is vulnerable, but it is not the preferred path. He is genuinely injured. The leg is badly infected. This is real, and it is bad, and it is visible. She moves him to a cave. She brings him in, props him up, assesses the wound with the clinical efficiency of a girl who has been providing for her family since she was 11, and has learned to evaluate what needs to be done rather than reacting to what is frightening. She gives him water. She gives him food. He watches her tend to him and performs with full professional commitment the patient who is grateful and afraid and relieved in beginning to feel something complicated about the person caring for him. He gives her this performance across multiple days, with escalating investment, because that is what the story requires, and because the story is the asset and the asset must be maintained. He tells her things. He tells her that his mother said the girl from District 12 would be the one to come home. This is true. He has selected it precisely because it is true. True things land differently than invented ones. They carry a different weight in the listener's body. And because it positions his mother as a villain, which she is, though not in the way Katniss will understand, and positions Peeta as a boy who was not believed in by the person who was supposed to believe in him most. This generates sympathy. He knows it generates sympathy. He selected it because it generates sympathy. He tells her she has no idea what effect she has on people. This is the most sophisticated thing he says. It is also, in the most technical sense, true. She genuinely does not understand how she reads to others. She is not a performer. She has no training in managing her own presentation. She simply is what she is, and what she is reads, to people who are watching, as extraordinary. She does not know this. He does. And the terrible architecture of the sentence is this. It is simultaneously a genuine observation, a performance of emotional vulnerability, and a description of how he has been using her for weeks. He is telling her the truth, with the full knowledge that she will receive it as intimacy rather than as the forensic assessment that it is. The cave romance is capital broadcast appointment viewing. The narrator, there are no cameras in this cave. The audience only sees what the capital editors choose to show, but they show enough. And here is what the audience does not know they are watching. A boy performing the complete interior life of someone who loves a girl for an audience of millions, in a room where the girl herself is the most immediate and most deceived member of that audience. She risks her life to get him medicine from the cornucopia. She goes in darkness, alone, to a place she knows is dangerous. She does this because he is sick, and she cannot let someone die if she can prevent it. This is not weakness, but it will function as weakness in the architecture of his plan, and he knows it. And he lets her go. He watches her leave the cave, and he files her bravery the way you file a resource, carefully, for when it is needed. The final three. After Thresh dies, killed by Cato, somewhere in the arena's interior, the canon announcing what the cameras eventually confirm, only 3 tributes remain. Katniss, Peeta. Cato, the Capitol's hype apparatus, runs at maximum volume. The narrator describes the broadcast, montages of cave moments set to swelling music. The editors who have been building the star-crossed lovers story for weeks finally delivering the full architecture of the narrative they have been constructing. Every sponsored gifted kiss. Every hand held in the dark moment that the Capitol cameras caught through cave walls. The specific vulnerability Peeta performed each time he looked at her when she wasn't watching. The look the editors cut to again and again, as their most reliable piece of evidence for the love story. The Capitol audience is completely in it. They have been in it for 8 days. They have reached the point in narrative investment where the story's resolution is not a thing they want. It is a thing they need. They need both of them to come home. They need the star-crossed lovers to survive. This is not an accident. Peeta is aware of all of this. He has been monitoring the sponsor traffic, the Capitol broadcast excerpts that tributes can access through their team's communications, the specific quality of attention the Capitol is paying to District 12's remaining tributes. He knows exactly how large the investment has become. He knows exactly what it means. The Capitol audience is at this moment his most powerful asset, and they are also the reason that what comes next must be executed perfectly. Not just effectively, because a messy or visible execution destroys the narrative, and the narrative has a life beyond the games that he is already planning for. He looks at Katniss across the cave on the final night of the 3 tribute stretch, and he performs, for perhaps the last time, the full interior life of a boy in love. The warmth, the specific softness around the eyes, the quality of attention that says, "You are the most important thing in my field of vision." She is beginning to feel something about him. He can see it. He has always been able to see it, the process of a guarded person beginning to let something in. She does not say it. She probably will not say it. She is not someone who says things. But it is visible to him, and it is visible to the cameras, and it is visible to the Capitol audience, and it is the last piece of the architecture. The Capitol now needs her to live, because she is the girl who is beginning to love him back. He files this. He sleeps. The mutation night. The game makers release the mutts at dusk. The mutations are wolf-like creatures engineered to be terrifying in the specific way that the game makers favor. Capable, fast, and wrong in some quality that is harder to name than their physical capabilities. Their eyes, in the last light, look like the eyes of dead tributes. The effect is deliberate. It works. They come from the forest's edges simultaneously, driving the remaining tributes toward the cornucopia in the specific mechanical way of an event that has been designed rather than evolved. Katniss runs. Peeta runs behind her. The leg is functional but slow, and the slow is real, and he lets it show because showing it is consistent with the performance, and the performance must be consistent. They reach the cornucopia. Cato is already there. What follows on the cornucopia is close and brutal. Cato grabs Peeta, uses him as a shield, the knife at his throat. Katniss's arrows looking for the angle that doesn't kill both of them. She shoots Cato's hand. He releases. He falls to the mutts below. It takes a long time. The narrator does not dramatize Cato's death. It describes it with the specific flatness of something that is awful and real and happening, and that no amount of narrative craft can make into something other than what it is. A 16-year-old boy trained his whole life for exactly this, dying badly while Katniss and Peeta watch from above, and Panem watches from their Capitol apartments. Katniss shoots the mercy arrow. Cato dies. The mutts withdraw. The cornucopia, the open sky, the first light of something that might be dawn on the far edge of the horizon. And Peeta is aware, with the precise awareness that has governed every decision he has made since the train, that the plan has reached its execution phase. The narrator slows, not metaphorically, structurally, literally. The pace of the narration changes. Sentences shorten, the connective tissue drops away. Here is what the Capitol cameras catch in the moments after Cato dies. Katniss lowers her bow. It drops to her left side, held loosely, not slung, not readied. She is exhausted in the specific way of someone who has been in a state of sustained physical and psychological emergency for 17 days and has just watched that emergency end. The specific exhaustion that arrives not during the crisis, but the moment the crisis terminates, the body recognizing, finally, that the signal it has been running on is no longer necessary, and beginning to release the tension that has been holding everything in place. Her face does something. The narrator does not describe exactly what it does, because it is one of those things, like Gale's face in the Justice Building, like the sound Peeta's father makes when he hugs his son in the goodbye room. That description reduces. What the cameras catch is a person beginning to feel multiple things at once, and the specific quality of a person who is usually so controlled that watching her feel multiple things at once is significant. It is the face of someone who is, for the first time in 17 days, letting something begin. She turns toward Peeta. She is going to say something. The narrator, we will never know what it was. We can guess. Something about going home, something about Prim, something about the fact that they both survived, and what that means, and whether she can let it mean what she thinks it means. She is a careful person. She has guarded everything her whole life. But here, at the end, in the silence, she is beginning to open a door, and that is when he moves. He has been counting. He has been counting since the moment Cato died. Not time exactly, but state. Her state. The specific sequence of exhaustion release, shoulder drop, bow lower, face shift, turn toward him that he identified in his pre-game planning as the window, the moment when her combat reflexes are at their lowest and her emotional availability is at its highest, the moment when she is most fully Katniss who trusts him and least fully Katniss who survives everything. He has been carrying the knife since the Career Alliance, not visibly, tucked, a specific knife from the Career Pack's inventory that he held back during the consolidation on Day 4, by the simple mechanism of not mentioning it when he turned his other weapons over. He kept it for exactly this. He is on her right side, where her draw hand is. They have been standing side by side. He has been counting. He steps, not into an embrace. The angle is wrong for that. The angle is something else. His right arm going across her body, not with the quality of holding, but with the quality of closing. A mechanical motion, controlled. The kind you make when you have decided to make it, rather than when you are being moved by something. She has time to understand that something is wrong. She does not have time to do anything about it. The knife. He is strong. This is always the thing people underestimate about him, because they see the charm and the flour-dusty softness and the bakery sun presentation, and they do not fully account for what hauling flour sacks since you were old enough to be useful does to a body over 16 years. He is strong. She doesn't scream. She doesn't have time to scream. The Capitol cameras catch what they catch. The angle is close. The editing team in the broadcast room somewhere below the arena scrambles to understand what they are seeing. One editor, a woman who has been cutting games footage for 11 years, stops the playback and watches the same 3 seconds 4 times before she can accept what the footage is showing her. She looks at his face. This is the detail the Capitol audience will talk about for years. This is the thing that veterans of that broadcast remember when they are old, not the act, but his face during it. It is not triumphant, not cruel, not apologetic, not the face of a person in the grip of a strong emotion of any kind. It is kind. The way a surgeon's face is kind when they are doing something difficult and necessary that the patient cannot yet understand. The way a person's face is when they have made peace with a choice no one else has been invited to see yet. She looks at his face. And then she doesn't look at anything. Claudius Templesmith's voice fills the arena. He has been the voice of the Hunger Games for 23 years. He has announced 73 victors. He has announced bloodbaths and alliances and reversals and the specific moments of dramatic irony that the Capitol's entertainment apparatus depends on. He announces Peeta Mellark as the sole victor of the 74th Hunger Games in a voice that, for the first time in 23 years, sounds uncertain. The Capitol's reaction. The narrator turns to the audience. Not Panem's audience, you, the person watching this, and asks you to sit with what the Capitol's viewing audience is experiencing in the 90 seconds after the announcement. The initial response is silence. Not the reverent silence of something beautiful, the stunned silence of people whose brain is processing input that does not match the expectation the previous 17 days have built. They were watching a love story. They were watching, right up until the moment they were not. A boy look at a girl with what appeared to be the specific tenderness of someone who would not survive her. They were watching the last chapter of the most affecting romantic narrative the games have produced in a decade. And then they were watching something else. Some of them are horrified. These are the people who invested in the story fully and have now been told that the investment was always fraudulent. Their grief is real. Their sense of betrayal is real. It will not be dangerous to the Capitol because it is personal rather than political. It is the grief of deceived audience members, not of citizens who have understood something systemic. Some of them are complicated. These are the people sophisticated enough to know that they were always watching a game and to have kept a part of themselves at a critical distance from the love story, and who are now experiencing the uncomfortable mixture of feeling, deceived despite having been sophisticated about the possibility of deception. They are impressed in the way that people who believe themselves sophisticated are sometimes impressed by cruelty. When the cruelty is executed with sufficient precision, a subset, small but present, feels something close to awe. Caesar Flickerman gives his post-games commentary. He is a professional who has been performing professionalism through genuinely difficult broadcasts for 2 decades. His voice wavers once. Only once. He says he played the game, and then nothing else. Because there is nothing else to say, he played the game. He played it in a way that no tribute before him has ever played it. He played it so well that an entire nation watched and did not see it coming. Snow watches the broadcast in his private office. He pours himself a glass from the bottle he keeps for private moments. He holds it up briefly, a small, private gesture with no audience, and drinks. The narrator describes this without commentary. Some things are more frightening when they are simply reported. District 12, the viewing hall. The same moment. Mandatory viewing, the screens in the Justice Building where the district is assembled to watch the final phases of the games. Prim Everdeen is 12 years old. She spent the first 17 days of these games believing in the love story because she needed to, because her sister was alive and surviving, and there was a boy who seemed to love her, and that was the best possible version of a nightmare. And she was 12 years old, and she needed the best possible version. She watches her sister die. This is the only sentence the narrator uses to describe this. Any additional words would be wrong. 3 feet away, watching the same screen, Gale Hawthorne. The narrator keeps its word. Some moments cannot be described without being diminished. This is one of them. It will only say this. Gale Hawthorne watches Katniss Everdeen die at the hands of the boy from the bakery who spent weeks performing love on national television. He watches the Capitol crowd's response. He watches Snow's toasting gesture, which the broadcast catches for a half-second before cutting away. He watches Claudius Templesmith announce the victor. He stands in the viewing hall of the Justice Building in District 12, and he feels. The narrator does not describe what he feels, except to note that whatever it is, it does not go away. It metabolizes into something harder and colder and very, very patient. It will be several months before it becomes something he acts on. But the thing that it will become is formed in this moment, in this room, watching this screen. The thing that Peeta Mellark put in motion in a reaping square 3 weeks ago has just produced its final consequence. Not the one he planned, not the girl's death, but the thing that grows in the specific soil of a man's grief when it is fed by enough rage and enough time. Gale Hawthorne closes his hands at his sides. He watches the screen. He will not look away. The Victor train, District 12, 3 weeks after. The train rolls into District 12 on a Tuesday morning. The mandatory crowd is assembled at the platform. Peacekeepers have ensured attendance. This is standard procedure. Has always been standard procedure. The Capitol understanding that a victor's return is a piece of political theater that requires an audience whether or not the audience wants to be there. The train stops. The doors open. Peeta Mellark steps onto the platform in the victor's clothes, tailored, Capitol-made, the specific aesthetic of someone who has been processed and polished by a system that knows how to make things presentable. He is smiling. He has been smiling since the hovercraft. He practiced the specific quality of the smile on the train, not triumphant. That is the wrong register for a district crowd at a ceremony like this. Something more muted, something that says, I am here. I survived. I carry the weight of having survived. I am your victor, and I am humbled by it. He gives the prepared speech. It has been workshopped with Caesar's team over 2 days of Capitol pre-departure briefings. The architecture is acknowledgement of the cost, gratitude to District 12, a specific mention of Katniss that frames her as someone who made him who he is, rather than someone he killed, a closing note about carrying her memory. He delivers it with the full vocal and physical commitment of someone who has been performing sincerity for 16 years and knows every register of it. The crowd does not applaud. This is not unexpected. He does not perform offense at the silence. He lets it exist, lets it be what it is, which is a district community responding to the return of the person who killed one of their own. And he closes the speech with the specific posture of a man who understands that he is not owed warmth here and is not asking for it. He has been in District 12 for 45 seconds, and he has already identified 3 faces in the crowd that require monitoring. One of them is Gale Hawthorne. He is standing near the back, close to the fence that borders the seam. He is not performing the crowd's silent grief. He is not performing anything. He is simply present, watching, with the specific quality of attention that Peeta recognizes because he has seen it in himself when he thinks no one is watching. He is cataloging. Peeta looks at him for exactly 1 second. Gale does not look away. Peeta does not look away. 1 second passes and Peeta moves his attention to the next face and files Gale Hawthorne under. Known quantity, active threat potential will require management. He will, before leaving District 12 the following morning, mention to his escort, casually as if it has just occurred to him, that the peacekeeper presence in the seam might benefit from some supplementation. He frames it as concern for district stability. His escort processes it as an astute victor observation and passes it along. Peacekeepers are assigned to increased seam surveillance within the week. He does not think about this again. It is filed. It is handled. He moves on. The victory tour, the mandatory victory tour, takes approximately 1 month. Every district, every crowd. The specific cruelty of standing in the home district of every tribute the games touched and saying words that the Capitol has approved and that the crowd must absorb in silence, because silence is the only response that does not cost. Them. Peeta is extraordinary at this. The narrator is specific. He is not good at it in the way that a gifted public speaker is good at a difficult task. He is extraordinary at it in the way that a person who has no genuine interior conflict about the thing they are doing is extraordinary at any task, with a completeness and a consistency that people who do have interior conflict cannot match, because the people with interior conflict are always fighting themselves a little, and fighting yourself shows. He does not fight himself. District 11 is the hardest crowd. It is always the hardest crowd, the district where Rue was from, where the community has the specific grief of a family that sent their smallest member into a machine and got nothing back. They are a large district, agricultural, with the kind of accumulated weariness of people who have been poor and controlled for longer than anyone in the room has been alive. They want to hate him. He does not give them a clean target. He stands before the assembled District 11 crowd, and he makes himself small. Not false small, genuinely, physically small. He has learned how to do this with his whole body, shoulders in, weight back, the specific posture of someone who is not claiming space. He looks at the faces in the front row, the ones who are grieving most visibly, and he holds eye contact with them in a way that says, "I see you, I am not looking away." He says that Rue reminded him of his own little sister. He says he thinks about her every day. He says that what he remembers most about her was how she moved through the arena, like she belonged to the light and the trees and the high places, like the arena couldn't fully contain her even at the end. He doesn't say sorry. He has never said sorry, and he never will. Apologies invite argument. Apologies open the floor to the question of whether the apology is sufficient, but he gives them something that functions as acknowledgement without creating a legal or moral record of wrongdoing. By the end of his 8 minutes in District 11, the crowd has not been converted, but the temperature has dropped. The specific quality of collective grief that is one step from collective anger has been cooled by enough degrees that it will not combust today. He boards the train. He notes in his private log, he has kept a private log since the games, a habit he will maintain for years, that District 11 required a 6 on the performance scale. District 3 will require a 4. District 2 will require a 3 because District 2 is the most pro-capital district and will receive him with something approximating warmth regardless of what he does. He calibrates his investment accordingly. The tour goes well. Every district, no riots, no eruptions, the capital's post-game stability assessment, normally a period of managed tension, passes without significant incident. Snow schedules a private meeting, the presidential mansion, Snow's office. The office smells of roses. This is the first thing you notice. The white roses in arrangements on every available surface. The specific intensity of the scent that speaks not of decoration, but of necessity. Peeta has read enough about Snow's history to understand what the roses are covering. He does not mention it, he files it. Snow is smaller than expected. This is always the case with people whose power is systemic rather than physical. The gap between their presence in a room and their presence in your life is enormous, and the physical person is always insufficient to the legend. He is immaculate. He looks at Peeta with the eyes of a man who has been reading people for longer than Peeta has been alive. He does not offer pleasantries. He offers truth. He says, Peeta Mellark is the most valuable victor the games have produced in a generation, not for physical strength, not for combat skill, but for what he did before and after the arena. He says, the districts are restless. They are always restless. He manages restlessness the way a physician manages a chronic condition, and the management works, but the work is constant. The most effective treatment for district restlessness is not always force. Sometimes it is story, he explains the role. Cultural ambassador, goodwill liaison, the official language is benign, visit, speak, represent, connect. The actual function is, anywhere a district is beginning to whisper about unfair quotas, about peacekeeper excess, about whether the cost of compliance exceeds the cost of resistance, Peeta goes there. He talks to them. He reminds them, not with threats but with presence and words, that the system is survivable, that survival is possible, that the boy from the poorest Victor district not only lived but thrives. He is, Snow says, the most expensive and most effective instrument of psychological suppression the capital has ever had access to. Peeta does not deliberate. He barely pauses. He says yes. Snow notes this. The narrator notes that Snow notes this, the absence of hesitation, the absence of the performance of reluctance that even the most willing people usually produce to demonstrate that they understand the moral weight of what they are agreeing to. Peeta does not perform reluctance because he does not feel it and has decided, in this room with this man, that performing it would be condescending to both of them. Snow looks at him for a long moment. He says, "Yes, this is the one." The new life. 2 years later, the capital penthouse is everything the Victor's Village in District 12 is not. Used, inhabited, full of the specific disorder of someone who lives somewhere rather than maintaining a showpiece. Books arranged by subject rather than appearance, notes in the margins, a desk with actual work on it, speeches in progress, district profiles, peacekeeper briefing documents he has been given access to as part of his expanded role. He attends capital parties with the genuine ease of someone who has been studying social performance his whole life and finds these rooms, finally, worthy of his particular skill. The capital's social elite are sophisticated in the way of people who have been sophisticated for generations. They know taste, they know theater, they know the specific pleasure of being in a room with someone who is performing at the highest possible level. They recognize it in him, they love him for it. He is the boy from the tragic love story. He is the victor who lost his heart in the arena. He is, in the capital's mythology, a romantic figure, the man who loved a girl enough to win a game in her honor and has been quietly, elegantly grieving ever since. He performs this mythology with complete commitment. He does not feel guilty. The narrator is careful here. This is not repression. Repression implies that the feeling exists somewhere and is being held down by active force. Repression requires effort. What Peeta Mellark does requires no effort at all because the machinery for guilt, the specific cognitive and emotional infrastructure that produces the experience of guilt in a person, is simply not present. It is not broken. It was never built. He sometimes thinks about Katniss. He thinks about her the way you think about a complicated project you completed. What worked, what could have been done better, whether the final execution was as clean as planned. He has decided that it was. He had one moment of genuine uncertainty, the 90-second window, the specific possibility that she might not drop her bow, that her combat reflexes might override the emotional release he was counting on. But she did drop it, and his calculation was correct, and the execution was clean. He is satisfied with the work. The narrator, there is a name for what he is. It's a clinical name. It describes a configuration of traits: superficial charm, grandiosity, lack of remorse, callousness, the need for stimulation, pathological lying, poor behavioral controls, and a self-perception of superiority that is impervious to evidence. The name exists. We don't need to use it here. We just need to understand that this is not a person who chose to become a monster. This is a person who always was what he is, and who has finally found a stage big enough for what he's always been. District 12. The seam, 1 year after the games. The seam is darker, not metaphorically, specifically, practically darker. The new peacekeepers are not the ones who were here before the games. The head peacekeeper who replaced the previous one, a man named Thread who arrived 6 months after Peeta's Victor tour, runs the district with the specific efficiency of someone who has been given a problem to solve and has decided that the problem is the district itself. There are more checkpoints. The fence is electrified now on a longer daily schedule. The hob has been raided twice. The surveillance flag that Peeta quietly placed on Gale Hawthorne before his departure has resulted, predictably, in exactly the kind of heightened attention that makes a seam man's life more difficult and more dangerous. Gale works the mines now. He is good at it. He is good at everything physical, and he works with the contained, deliberate energy of someone who has organized themselves around a long objective. He still hunts. In the narrow windows when the fence is down, when the peacekeeper schedule allows, when the risk calculation comes out survivable, the woods are still the woods. They have always been the woods, but now they are also the only place where he can think without being watched. He thinks about the same thing he has been thinking about for a year. He has reconstructed the entire love story. He has gone back through everything he watched, the training scores, the cave footage, the sponsor gifts, and looked at it not with the eyes of someone watching a love story, but with the eyes of someone who knows that it wasn't one. The reconstruction is not difficult. The evidence was always there. He simply did not have the framework to read it correctly until he had a reason. The specific wound, she died because she was good. She died because she trusted someone who had studied her trust for 16 years and identified it as the precise mechanism of her vulnerability. The capital built a system that rewards the performance of goodness and punishes the actual thing, and then put it on television, and then cheered. He has been sitting with this for a year. What comes out of a year of sitting with this specific wound? In the woods, in the mine, at the table at night when his family is asleep, is not rage in the hot, unmanageable sense. It is something colder and more structural. He is not becoming reckless. He is becoming organized. He is turning the grief into a plan the way you turn ore into something harder. He builds his network carefully. People who lost family in the games. People angry about the new peacekeeper regime. People who understand, in the specific way that seen people understand things that have to stay unspoken, that what happened in the 74th Games was not an aberration but an expression of the system's logic. He trusts them with small things first: information, tools. He is building trust with the patience of someone who has decided that this time, patience is the weapon. The merchant woman named Mira comes through District 12 twice a year. She sells fabric and thread. She asks during a meeting in a trusted miner's basement whether he has heard of anyone making contact with the survivors underground. He knows the phrase, "You hear things in the seam." He says yes. She gives him a time and a location. Underground, District 13. The scale of it shocks him. He has been preparing for a basement rebellion, a network of angry people operating in the margins, using what they have. He finds a city, a full, functioning city beneath a destroyed landscape, infrastructure intact, military organized, population that has been living underground for decades with the specific self-containment of people who have had no choice but to develop everything they need within the walls they have. He walks through it with the escort they assign him, and he does not perform wonder. He absorbs. Alma Coin is exactly what she is. The narrator describes her with the specific care of someone who wants to be accurate, efficient, ideological, calculating, and dangerous in the way that people are dangerous when they genuinely believe they are history's instrument. She is not warm. She does not perform warmth. She has decided, at some point in her leadership, that warmth is a resource she does not have to spend, because the people of District 13 do not need her to be warm. They need her to be correct. She sees in Gale what she needs: rage, discipline, tactical instinct, and a personal motivation so intense it will never require external resupply. She does not perform sympathy for his loss. She takes it seriously as a military resource. She says, "Your motivation is pure. People like you don't hesitate at the critical moment. I need someone who will not hesitate." Gale looks at her across the desk. This woman in her gray uniform, in her underground office, with her maps and her briefing documents, and her absolute certainty about what history requires, and finds that the absence of warmth is not, in this context, a problem he has had enough warmth performed at him by someone who meant none of it. He finds Coin's directness preferable. They make a deal. He becomes District 13's principal surface commander for district recruitment. She gives him resources. He gives her his networks. He attaches one condition. He states it plainly, without preamble. Peeta Mellark does not get a tribunal. Peeta Mellark gets Gale. Coin pauses. She looks at him with the assessment she applies to everything: utility, cost, risk, strategic value. She neither agrees nor disagrees. She says, "Win the war first." He takes this as close enough to yes. What Gale is becoming, the narrator takes a long pause here. Not for the action. The action is happening and will be described in the chapters that follow. For the person. For what the accumulation of grief and purpose and the specific daily practice of turning yourself into a weapon is doing to Gale Hawthorne across these months. He is not the same person he was in the Justice Building viewing hall, watching the screen. The person he was in that viewing hall was raw. The wound was fresh. The grief was present. The thing that hurt him was hurting him in real time. He still loved her in the present tense in that moment. The grief was the measure of the love. The person he is now carries the same love, but it has been compressed by the weight of what he has decided to do with it. The grief has not disappeared. It has been metabolized into something with a different chemical structure, something that does not weep, but that also does not sleep, that does not soften at the wrong moments, that has found in purpose a management strategy that is efficient but not healing. He is becoming the thing the capital system at its worst produces. A person who has decided that the only response to a world that rewards cruelty is to be more efficient at it. Not crueler. He is not cruel. He still lies awake. He still knows the names of every person in his network and cares whether they survive. But more efficient. More willing to treat individual costs as acceptable in service of aggregate outcomes. The narrator draws the line between him and Peeta with the specific care this requires. He is not Peeta. The difference is that Gale's ruthlessness is fueled by grief and love and fury. Real emotions, human emotions, burning at a temperature that will eventually consume him if it doesn't consume everything else first. Peeta's ruthlessness is fueled by nothing. It is simply the natural expression of who he is. In another universe, Katniss Everdeen stood between these two men, and was the mediating force that kept both of them human. She was the thing that Gale loved enough to restrain his worst instincts for, and the thing that Peeta needed enough to maintain his performance for. Without her, both of them are free. Neither of them is better for it. District 8, Year 3. District 8 breaks first. The factories. The specific grinding quality of work that produces things you will never own for people who will never know your name. The particular wariness of a district that has been at the bottom of the capital's priority list for so long that the wariness has become structural. A factory fire set by 3 workers who have decided that the cost-benefit of compliance has finally tipped. A peacekeeper response that exceeds what the situation requires, which is the specific kind of overreach that turns a local grievance into a communal one. By the end of the week, District 8 is in open revolt. District 13 activates its networks. Gale's people are already there. He has been building District 8 connections for 18 months, operating through the fabric seller channels and the underground courier routes that Coin's infrastructure has established. The revolt is chaotic and passionate and underarmed, but it is real. And if it can be sustained, if it can link to the uprisings that 13 has been seeding in Districts 5 and 3, the simultaneous fracture of capital military capacity becomes possible. Snow sends Peeta. He arrives in District 8 without peacekeepers. This is deliberate, the studied choice of someone who understands that showing up with soldiers is a message about power, and that in a district already hostile to demonstrations of power, that message is counterproductive. He shows up alone, in his cultural ambassador role, carrying nothing that reads as capital authority except himself. He asks to speak. There are crowds. Some of them want to throw things at him. He stands in the district's central square in the specific posture he has selected, not aggressive, not defensive, the posture of a man who is neither claiming space nor ceding it, and he looks at the front row. He speaks for 40 minutes. The narrator walks through the architecture of the speech and the specific detail it deserves, because this is Peeta's weapon at full extension and it must be seen clearly. He opens not with the capital's talking points, but with acknowledgement. Not apology, acknowledgement. He acknowledges that District 8 works hard, and the distribution of what that work produces is not equal, and he will not stand here and tell them it is. This surprises people. They came prepared to reject the capital's standard narrative. He does not give them the standard narrative. He takes the ground they were going to fight on and gives it to them before the fight starts. Then he pivots. He talks about what revolt produces, specifically in measurable terms, what the capital does to districts that sustain open revolt. He does not threaten. He describes with the detached accuracy of a historian what happens. He is not making a case for the capital's legitimacy. He is making a case for the calculus of survival. Then the pivot that closes it. He makes them feel that he is one of them. Son of a district, tribute. Survivor, he invokes the games not as justification but as shared wound. He was in that arena. He knows what the capital asks of them. He is not asking them to love the capital. He is asking them to survive it. By the end of 40 minutes, District 8 has not been converted. The peacekeepers are not suddenly beloved. Nothing systemic has changed, but the temperature has dropped. The specific quality of collective anger that is 1 degree from collective action has been cooled by enough degrees that it will not combust today. Gale's local commanders cannot maintain momentum. The revolt stalls. 3 weeks later, it collapses. Gale gets the report from his District 8 contact. He reads it twice. He puts it down. He sits with it for a while. He says, to the room that only contains him, fire doctrine. He will develop this concept with Coin's strategists over the following months. The principle is, if Peeta's tool is words and trust, you remove the conditions under which trust can function. You create situations of such visible, visceral injustice that no amount of charisma can explain them away. You make the capital show its worst face deliberately by targeting its infrastructure in ways designed to provoke responses it cannot moderate. The math of this is, you will cause people who were not yet combatants to become casualties. Not by targeting them, but by creating conditions in which the capital's response, predictably brutal, creates them as casualties. Gale knows this. He accepts it. He develops the doctrine anyway. The narrator holds here. The narrator watches this with the same forensic detachment it used to watch Peeta in the river, alone, inventorying his situation. Gale has arrived at the place where people become acceptable losses in service of a goal. He got there through love and rage. Peeta got there through the absence of both. The place is the same. The 75th Hunger Games, the third quarter quell. Every 25 years, the Hunger Games includes a special provision. a twist engineered to remind Panem that the capital's control extends even to the structure of its most reliable mechanism. The 75th Games is the third quarter quell. In a version of this story the twist was designed to target Katniss Everdeen specifically, to destroy the Mockingjay before she became one by forcing her back into the arena. That version of the story required that Katniss exist, which she does not. There is no Mockingjay in this timeline. There is no single perfect symbol around which the rebellion can organize. There is Gale's network, there is District 13's infrastructure, there is the slow and patient work of building the capacity for what Coin calls the full activation. But there are Victor rebels. The Victors who have been supporting District 13's efforts, Finnick Odair from District 4, Johanna Mason from District 7, Beatty Latier from District 3, are nodes in the Resistance's network. They are also famous. They are also, by the capital's established social contract, untouchable through direct action. Killing a Victor openly is too politically expensive, creates too clean a martyr, requires a story the capital does not want to tell. Peeta brings Snow the solution. Private meeting, the roses, the specific quality of the office that by now feels familiar to him. He has been here dozens of times, has learned every surface and sightline, has had conversations in this room that would end most people who had them. He explains the quarter quell mechanism, the existing Victor's reaping pool, the selection process that is publicly presented as historical obligation and privately managed to land on specific names. The arena as a legal, publicly sanctioned, narratively impeccable mechanism for ending people the capital needs, ended. He walks Snow through the targeting logic, Finnick's maritime network, Johanna's District 7 contacts, Beatty's technical capabilities. He does not include everyone. Including everyone would be too obvious, would expose the targeting as targeting rather than historical lottery. He includes enough, the others are cover. He uses living people as cover for the killing of other living people with the same systematic detachment with which he does everything. Snow looks at him across the desk. The narrator does not describe Snow's expression. It only says, he thinks for perhaps the 100th time, yes, this is the one. The quell announcement is made. The twist declared. Existing victors will be reaped. The Game Maker room, Peeta requests to watch. He does not need to be there. This is not his official role. Snow allows it because he understands. In the way that two people who are similar understand things about each other, that Peeta is auditing. That there is a professional satisfaction he finds in seeing whether the work was done correctly, whether the plan executed as planned. Finnick Odair dies in the arena. The narrator does not describe the manner of his death except to note that it is not quick. Finnick Odair won his games at 14 years old, the youngest victor in history at that point, and spent the following years being prostituted by Snow to capital elites in exchange for political secrets. He was the most beloved victor alive for a decade. He was also, quietly, the backbone of District 13's coastal supply network. He dies in an arena that Peeta suggested, through a mechanism Peeta designed, implemented by a system Peeta serves. Peeta watches. He is not enjoying this. The narrator is careful. He is not sadistic. Sadism requires the kind of emotional engagement with suffering that he simply does not have. He is auditing. He is watching the plan execute to determine whether it executed correctly. It does. He takes notes. He closes his notebook. He thanks the game makers for a well-run quarter quell. He leaves. The narrator sits in the room after he exits. The blank screens. The dead games, the notebook that Peeta will reference when he debriefs with Snow and when he plans subsequent operations. He took notes. District 13. The briefing room. Coin's voice does not change when she delivers bad news. It stays in the same register, measured, precise, the voice of someone who has already processed the emotional dimension of the information and moved into the operational phase. Finnick Odair, dead. Johanna Mason, dead. Beatty Latier, captured, status unclear. The coastal network collapsed. 3 district cells compromised because Finnick's contact lists were recovered from the arena's post-mortem sweep. The losses are significant. The losses are, in Coin's assessment, recoverable. The infrastructure is not gone. The districts are not pacified. The activation remains possible. But the timeline has been accelerated. The longer they wait, the more the capital can execute further purges using mechanisms they now know exist. Gale receives the briefing in the underground room with the maps. He does not say anything for a moment after Coin finishes. Then, we have to go now. We wait any longer, we won't have enough left to go with. Coin looks at him across the maps. She assesses. She agrees. The full activation is authorized. The army. It is not the army you imagine when you hear the word. It has no uniforms. Or rather, it has the uniforms that people already own. The work clothes of miners and factory workers and farmers, adapted with whatever BT's engineering teams have been able to produce in the decades of underground manufacturing that District 13 has been running since its supposed destruction. It has the weapons that Coin's foundries have been producing underground, functional, utilitarian, bearing no resemblance to the ceremonial armaments of capital propaganda. It has the peacekeeper-issued weapons that Gale's networks have been quietly accumulating from sympathetic corps members and black market channels. It has, in several districts, the specific intimate knowledge of terrain that people who have worked a place their entire lives have about it. What it has most of all is motivation. Not the professional motivation of a military corps trained for this. Not ideology, not exactly. The people in this army are not primarily philosophers. They are people who have been hungry and watched their children stand in reaping squares and hauled coal and woven fabric and grown grain for people who will never know their names. The motivation is the specific, durable, non-negotiable kind that comes from having run out of the thing that made the cost of compliance feel manageable. Gale has drilled them. He is a gifted commander, patient in planning, decisive in execution, and genuinely visibly sharing physical risk with the people he leads. His fighters would follow him to any objective he named. Some of them know which objective is personal. The multi-district offensive. 12 districts moving simultaneously. The strategy is Coin's in broad architecture and Gale's in execution detail. Fracture the capital's ability to reinforce any single front by creating 12 fronts simultaneously. The capital's peacekeeping capacity is spread, always has been spread. It is the structural vulnerability of an empire that controls by presence rather than by consent. District 2 is the hardest. It is always the hardest, the most pro-capital district, the one whose infrastructure and ideology have been most thoroughly shaped by decades of capital investment and favoritism. It costs them more than the others. They pay the cost. Districts 8 and 11 fall quickly. Gale's networks are deepest here, the preparation most thorough, the population most ready. The specific irony of District 8 is not lost on the narrator. The district Peeta talked down in Year 3 is the district that falls first, and falls completely, because Peeta's success there 3 years ago was tactical rather than structural. He cooled the temperature, he did not change the fuel. By the end of 2 weeks, the capital is surrounded. Supply lines cut. Peacekeepers inside the capital city defending without reinforcement. The mathematical reality has become undeniable, even to the generals who are most invested in denying it. Snow's offer, Peeta's refusal. Snow calls him in. For the first time in their relationship, in 5 years of private meetings in the rose-scented office, in 5 years of strategy and deployment and the specific intimacy of two people who each see the mechanism behind the other's mask, Snow looks tired, not broken, not afraid, not the thing that the capital's enemies want him to be. Tired. The specific exhaustion of a man who has been managing an enormous and complex system for decades and is watching it finally exceed his management capacity. He offers Peeta a deal, an escape route, a new identity, resources sufficient to sustain a comfortable life in a country that does not yet know what Panem is going to become. He says, "You have been the most valuable asset I have had in 20 years. I would rather you survived to build something elsewhere than died in rubble that we could not save." Peeta looks at him. He declines. The narrator is careful here. This must be read accurately. Not from courage, not from loyalty, not from any moral calculation about the right thing to do in a losing situation. He declines because running would require him to become someone who had lost, and he does not believe he has lost yet. He has never been in a situation he could not talk his way out of. He has never been in a room with Gale Hawthorne. Snow looks at him for a long moment. He nods once. He lets him go. He has said what he came to say. He does not seem surprised. The breach. Day 19. The capital's outer walls are breached at 0600 on the 19th day of besiege. Street warfare in the capital is different from street warfare in the districts in the specific way that everything about the capital is different. The architecture is built for spectacle rather than function. The grand boulevards and sweeping government spaces designed to make citizens feel small and the state feel enormous. This turns out to be terrible for defense. The peacekeepers know how to hold positions and execute crowd control. They do not know how to adapt to opponents who have spent their lives working in tight, specific, difficult terrain. Gale is at the front. He told his fighters he would be with them, and he is with them. He moves through the capital streets with a precision that people who see him remember afterward, not because it is beautiful, but because it is complete. Every decision fast, every movement purposeful, the specific quality of someone who has been moving toward one objective for 4 years and has finally covered enough ground to see it. He is looking for one building, the mansion, the final perimeter. Snow is in his private office when Gale's advance team reaches it. He is seated, not hiding. The Capitol's last defensive perimeter has collapsed, and he has received the report, and he has done what he needed to do, activated the archive destruction protocols, cleared certain records that would be more useful destroyed than discovered, and now he is seated, composed, in the office that smells of roses, waiting. He says one thing to Gale before the soldiers take him. He says he isn't what you think he is. He isn't a monster you can explain. He's something worse. He's a demonstration, a proof that the system produces what the system selects for. You can kill him, but you cannot kill the logic that made him. He does not answer it because he does not have an answer to it. He knows this. He has known it since the first time he reconstructed the love story and understood that Peeta Mellark was not an anomaly, was not a thing the Capital created deliberately, was simply a person whose specific configuration of traits found in the Capital's system the exact environment in which those traits flourished. Snow is taken alive for trial. He will not survive to be executed. The specific toxicity of decades of self-administered poison and the blood he has been coughing behind closed doors for years will resolve the question on its own timeline. Justice finds him in the end. It simply arrives from the inside rather than the outside. Gale leaves him with the soldiers and keeps moving. It takes 40 more minutes to find Peeta. The broadcast room, he is exactly where Gale expected him to be. The broadcast room in the presidential mansion's east wing, the nerve center of Capital Media, the room from which every victory interview and every reaping announcement and every Capital broadcast has been transmitted for decades. It is full of cameras and screens and transmission equipment, the specific density of a room built for the production of narrative. The cameras are off. The district forces severed the broadcast network 2 hours ago. Peeta is sitting at the primary desk, Caesar Flickerman's desk, the place where victors are interviewed, where love stories are affirmed, where the Capital tells Panem what it is watching and what it should feel about what it is watching. He is not transmitting. He cannot transmit. He knows this. He is sitting in front of where the cameras were. When Gale comes through the door, Peeta looks at him with the expression he uses when he is doing a rapid initial assessment, the fast inventory of a new room's power configuration. He finds what he finds. He processes it. Then he does the thing that is most completely and authentically himself. He speaks first. You came a long way. The confrontation, Gale crosses the room. He is holding a weapon. He has been holding weapons for 4 years, and they have long since stopped feeling like things he is carrying, and started feeling simply like part of what he is. He is aware, standing in front of Peeta Mellark for the first time, of something that surprises him. Nothing like what he expected. He has imagined this moment in specific detail across 4 years of long nights and hard days. He imagined rage, the white-hot clarifying kind, the kind that makes everything simple. What arrives instead is quieter and worse. He feels the specific grief of someone who has won. Katniss is not in this room. She will not be in any room that Gale enters for the rest of his life. The city outside this building is quiet in the specific way of a place where something enormous has just ended. 4 years of planning, of building, of the fire doctrine, and the network, and the drills and the siege. It has produced this. Panem without snow, and the Capitol's walls down, and Peeta Mellark sitting in front of turned-off cameras. He bargained with himself for years, in the woods, in the mine, in the underground briefing rooms, that the proximity would give him something. That standing here would feel like justice. That standing here would feel like something. Peeta reads all of this on Gale's face. He is extraordinarily good at reading faces. He has been extraordinarily good at reading faces for as long as he has been alive. He reads Gale's face in the specific way that he has always read everything. Completely, accurately, and without any of the emotional weight that the reading might produce in a different kind of person. Peeta, you're realizing it won't help. Gale says, don't. I'm not asking you not to do it. His voice is even. Not calm as a performance. Genuinely even, the voice of a person who has processed the relevant variables and arrived at an accurate assessment of the situation. I'm not going to talk my way out of this room. I know that. I just want you to understand what you're doing before you do it. Gale, I know what I'm doing. You're finishing a story that began in a reaping square 4 years ago. You've written yourself into it as the person who delivers what the story requires. A pause. But here's what I understand about stories that you might not yet. They end when they end. They don't continue after the last page. You will still be here when this is over. You will still be whatever you've become. The room is quiet, the turned-off cameras, the transmission equipment that no longer transmits, the desk that has been the staging point for decades of managed narrative, now occupied by the man who understood narrative better than anyone the Capitol had ever seen, and used that understanding with a completeness that is only visible in full when you can see the whole arc of it. Gale says, "You want me to feel something? You want me to do this with some emotion you can analyze?" Yes. Peeta says, simply, without apology, "Does it change anything?" "That I know you're doing it." Peeta thinks about this. The narrator notes, for perhaps the first time in the story, he genuinely thinks rather than performs thinking. The difference is visible in the specific quality of the pause, not the calibrated pause, the one he uses to make responses seem more considered than they are, but the real one. "No," he says, "I don't think it does." A long silence. Gale looks at him. Across the desk that has been the staging point for 74 years of managed truth, across 4 years of rage and purpose, and the specific metabolization of grief into will, he looks at Peeta Mellark and he sees not a monster. The narrator has been careful about this throughout, and it is most important here. He sees a person, a specific, coherent, internally consistent person who is exactly what he has always been and who found in the Capitol system the exact environment his specific configuration required. A person who never hated Katniss. The narrator returns to this, who never felt anything about her that could be called hatred, who simply used her with the same systematic efficiency with which he has used everything and everyone in his life, because hate would have required a kind of emotional engagement that he does not have the machinery for. He didn't hate her, that would have been survivable. He simply never loved her, and she never knew the difference. Gale hears something in Peeta's analysis of what he is doing, the echo, not of Peeta's voice, but of hers. A voice in the woods, years ago, in a specific conversation about a specific kind of hunting. "Don't become the thing you're hunting." She said it about the Capitol. He said she was naive. He was right that she was naive about the specific strategic question. He is now wondering, standing in this room, whether naive and right are mutually exclusive. He looks at the weapon in his hand. He looks at Peeta. He pulls the trigger. Not in rage, not with a speech, not with any of the emotional architecture that would make this a story about catharsis. He does it in the same specific quiet that Peeta used at the cornucopia, with a kind of terrible deliberateness that is its own statement about the 4 years between these two moments and what those years have done to the person. Standing here, Peeta's last expression is not fear. It is not surprise. It is the specific professional resignation of a man who ran his calculations correctly and found an output he had already accounted for as a low-probability scenario. He was right that he could not talk his way out of this room. He was right that the tool does not work on someone who has already seen it deployed and has decided in advance that knowing the mechanism does not change the outcome. He files this away in a mental archive that will not be opened again. Gale sets the weapon down on the desk in front of the blank cameras. He stands there for a long time. Then he walks out. The aftermath, the tribunals happen, Snow's remaining officials, peacekeepers who committed documented atrocities, Capitol administrators who ran the mechanisms of control at the district level. The process is imperfect and contested and takes years. This is what justice looks like when you build it from the rubble of a system that was designed to prevent it. Coyne proposes a final Hunger Games using Capitol children. When the vote is called among district representatives and surviving victors and transitional council members, Gale votes yes. This is the detail that history records about him. He is not celebrated as a hero. He is recognized as the commander who ended the war. History will argue about the choices he made in ending it for longer than anyone present to witness it will be alive. He goes back to what remains of District 12. He hunts. In the specific woods, on the specific routes, using the specific techniques she taught him. He teaches some children how to set snares. Her technique, the one she showed him when he was old enough to go with her, the one he has never forgotten and never will. The children are too young to know who he is teaching them. He does not explain. He shows them. He does not feel redeemed. He does not feel damned. He feels like a person who did the thing the world made necessary and who must now find out whether the person who did that thing has anything left that belongs to a world that no longer needs it from him. The new government is messy and contested. The narrator does not offer you a clean resolution here, not because resolutions don't exist, but because the honest version of what follows a war like this, one is not clean. Some districts' new leadership is as provincial and controlling as what it replaced, with different beneficiaries. The process of genuine structural reform, not just new faces at the top, but different relationships between the center and the margins, will take decades, and the people doing it will make mistakes. And the mistakes will cost people who do not deserve the cost. The Hunger Games are abolished. This is clean. This happens immediately on the first day of the transitional government. Before anything else, it is the one thing every faction agrees on. The arenas are demolished. The game maker infrastructure is dismantled. The victor circuit is dissolved. No child will ever again stand in a reaping square. This, at minimum, is true. In the first year of the new Panem, in the district formerly known as 12, a memorial is built in the town square. It is simple, a carved stone, modest, the specific modesty of people who have been told not to want things and have therefore learned to express important things with economy. On the stone, one line from a song, not a capital song, a seam song, the kind that has existed in District 12 for longer than anyone can trace, the kind that gets passed down not in written form, but in the way that folk music moves, from throat to ear to throat across generations. A song about a meadow and a tree, and a question that the song asks and does not answer. Most people who see the memorial in the first years after the war don't know who it is for. They were too young. They know the outline, a girl, the 74th Games, District 12, but the outline is not the person. And the person is mostly gone from the living memory of a district that has had too much to survive to have the bandwidth for careful history. The older ones know. The ones who were in the Justice Building viewing hall that Tuesday. The ones who had a name in the reaping pool that year. Whose terror has a specific quality when they remember standing in those rows. The ones who hunted with her, who bought bread from her family, who watched her volunteer in the specific arrested silence of people who have just watched someone do something genuine, in a context that has always required performance. They remember the narrator's final words. History remembers Peeta Mellark as the victor who began a war. History remembers Gale Hawthorne as the commander who ended one. History barely remembers Katniss Everdeen at all. Just a girl from a mining district who volunteered at a reaping and didn't come home. But if you ask the people of District 12, the older ones, the ones who were there, they remember her differently. They remember a girl in the reaping square, stepping forward saying a name. They remember that it cost her everything. They remember that it was enough, for a moment, to make everyone in that square feel something worth feeling. She was the only one of them who was exactly who she appeared to be. That is why she died.